Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel GMB SHOW. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Eamonn Holmes confessed that he hated Donny Osmond before meeting him during a previous chat on GB News. The television host also revealed a run-in he had with the late singer David Cassidy. In a conversation on GB News that aired in 2024, Eamonn recounted his encounters with Paul Coit and Ellie Costello. Delving into more detail, he started, "I have never had a nosebleed in my life, except I did once, right? It was pouring like a tap." "Not over Donny," Paul probed, as Ellie queried, "Not over Joan Collins?" "Over Donny," Eamonn affirmed before carrying on. "It was pouring like a tap, and Donny was presenting this program called, I think it was called The Pyramid Game. He walked into my dressing room, and I was bleeding and panicking like mad into the sink, and I got this pat on the head, and he said, 'Hey, buddy.'" Paul and Ellie erupted into laughter as the sports reporter requested, "Say that again." "Hey, buddy," Eamonn echoed before adding, "Hey, buddy, don't worry, and he was doing all of this to me, and he said to me, 'This happens to me all the time.'" He was probably fibbing, but anyway, it made me feel very good, and I felt bad because when I was 14, I hated him. "And he turned out to be really nice," Ellie interjected, as Eamonn responded, "There was him and there was David Cassidy." David Cassidy was a complete ass. He was not a very nice man at all, but Donny Osmond, the nicest fella. "I say that, but I have had a run-in with Cassidy," Eamonn declared, before Paul concurred, "So have I." In 2024, Eamonn and Ruth shocked fans by confirming their separation. While Ruth has remained silent on their split, Eamonn did release a brief statement on GB News. He said days after their announcement, "Just before we move on, we'd just like to thank people for your support for Ruth and I over the last few days as to the news of our separation. Your support for both of us is very much appreciated." The London drizzle fell softly against the glass of the studio window, but Eamonn Holmes was too deep in thought to notice. For weeks, his personal life had been plastered across the headlines, the end of his long marriage to Ruth Langsford. The couple had once been daytime television's golden pair, their easy banter the glue that held millions of viewers to the screen. Now that chapter was closed, and Eamonn found himself bearing his soul on an evening radio show that promised nothing off limits. The producer had warned him, "You don't have to talk about the feud if you're not ready." But Eamonn had already decided. Silence had never been his style. He leaned forward into the microphone, his Belfast accent carrying a new weight, one born of exhaustion and raw honesty. "You know," he began, "when Ruth and I split, the papers made it sound like we just drifted apart. But the truth is, there was someone else involved. And I'll be honest," he paused, letting the tension hang in the air, "I hated him." The studio went still. Even the sound technician looked up from his controls. Eamonn exhaled sharply, as though saying the words had cracked something open. This man was supposed to be a friend. He was around us, at dinners, backstage at shows, always the charming guest. I trusted him. Then, one day, I realized he wasn't just around us. He was between us. He shifted in his chair, eyes flashing with a mixture of pain and defiance. You can imagine how that felt, to watch someone I loved for decades slip away, not because we stopped caring for each other, but because trust had been shattered. And worse, to know the person I blamed was someone I once welcomed into my home. The host, sensing the rawness of the moment, spoke gently. "That must have been unbearable." "It was," Eamonn admitted. "There were nights I couldn't sleep. I replayed conversations in my head, every joke he made, every time Ruth laughed at something he said. I started seeing clues everywhere, whether they were real or not. And I'll confess this, hatred is a poison. I let it sit in me for months." His voice cracked, the vulnerability slicing through his usual composed broadcaster persona. "But here's the thing," he continued after a long silence. You can't live like that forever. Hating him didn't undo the past. It didn't fix the future. It just ate away at me. The host asked softly, "Do you still hate him?" Eamonn leaned back, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "No, not anymore. I've reached a point where I can say I feel pity, maybe even indifference, because life is too short. And whatever bitterness I held, it wasn't worth sacrificing the man I want to be. I won't let him define the rest of my story." The confession sent ripples through social media that evening. Fans debated who the unnamed figure was, speculation flying faster than Eamonn could refresh his phone. Some applauded his honesty, while others urged caution, fearing the media storm that might follow. Yet Eamonn, for the first time in months, felt strangely lighter. He had admitted what so many people keep bottled up, the corrosive power of resentment and the liberation of letting it go. Later that night, walking alone through the rain-soaked streets, he reflected on his words. Ruth was gone, the life they had built now part of his history. But in telling the truth, his truth, he felt he had taken the first step toward peace. He whispered into the cool September air, "I hated him, but I won't hate myself anymore." And with that, Eamonn Holmes disappeared into the night, no longer burdened by silence, ready to write his next chapter.